Zhou was stunned for a moment before nodding with a smile. This test of the Yellow River Emperor's sword was quite interesting. Ile did not expect that his subconscious actions would actually become the key to passing the test of the Yellow River Emperor's sword. Ile did not think too much about it, as I took the Yellow River Emperor's sword and looked at it. Information about the holy artifact appeared. Holy artifact name, Yellow River Emperor's sword. Holy artifact grade, high-level will holy artifact will 1 Yellow River. Regal, a living being who holds the Yellow River Emperor's sword, and is recognized by the spirit of the Yellow River Emperor's sword, is the ruler of the Yellow River region. The ruler of the Yellow River region is above all existences in the Yellow River region and can command any Yellow River citizens in the Yellow River region. Holy artifact will 2 Yellow River Saha / the Yellow River Emperor's sword is a holy artifact formed from the source of the Yellow River realm. It can control all the power of the Yellow River realm. The wielder can release the Yellow River Saha / and unleash an attack that exceeds the limit of the Supreme Will realm to kill all enemies in front of you. Note 1. This willpower skill can only be used once a year. Holy artifact will 3 Yellow River. Parameter, the Yellow River Thirk sword, controls the power of the will of life and death reincarnation. The owner of the Yellow River Thirk sword can send the soul of any life form back to the myriad worlds every day and complete his own resurrection. The highest level of resurrection is a high-level Supreme Will Realm expert. Holy artifact will 4 key of Yellow River, Part 1. The Yellow River Emperor's sword and the Yellow River stone slab are the 2 keys to unlock the inheritance of the will of Yellow River. With them, you will have a chance to open the inheritance of the will of Yellow River in the future and obtain all the inheritance of the will of Yellow River. Prompt. Requires willpower to recognize a master. Hiss! Zhou took a deep breath after reading it. Good God! It was actually a high-level will holy artifact. This Yellow River will was not famous when it was alive. He did not expect the will holy artifact in his hand to be a top-notch will holy artifact. Impressive. Moreover, a life form, with the Yellow River Emperor's sword was the master of the Yellow River realm. This was the territory of a Supreme Will Realm existence. Moreover, this territory was connected to the land of the living and the netherworld. Be it in importance, symbolism, or other aspects, it was definitely among the top 10 in the myriad worlds. He had obtained everything now that he had obtained the Yellow River Emperor's sword. Zhou looked at the Yellow River Emperor's sword in his hand and felt as if he had fallen into a dream. It didn't seem real. At this moment, Uncle Tu's voice awakened him. Your Majesty. Uncle Tu changed the way he addressed Zhou and said respectfully, You've already obtained the Yellow River Emperor's sword. It's time to fight for the inheritance of Yellow River's will. I can already feel that the Yellow River slate has a new master. This is the best time to go. In addition, I'd like to say something here. I feel that in the entire myriad worlds, only you are most qualified to take over the position of Lord Yellow River's will. If this position is eventually taken by someone else, or even our enemies, I will be very sad. Zhou nodded. Then, he suddenly asked, If this emperor didn't get the Yellow River Emperor's sword this time, but the guy from the Illusionist clan did, how would things develop, the Illusionist clan is evil by nature. They can't control the Yellow River Emperor's sword that represents mercy. After Uncle Tu finished speaking, he revealed a sinister and terrifying smile. Even if they really used a strange or forceful method to obtain the Yellow River Emperor's sword, I will bring the Yellow River Emperor's sword along with me, even if I have to disobey the will of Yellow River. The Yellow River Emperor's sword will never be handed over to the murderer of the Yellow Rivers. Will. Uncle Tu's eyes were still filled with hatred. He was an old man who had been here since the birth of Yellow River. The relationship between him and the will of Yellow River was not like the relationship between a subordinate and a king, but more like the relationship between a younger brother and sister. Therefore, Uncle Tu absolutely hated the murderer who killed the will of Yellow River. Zhou nodded silently. This emperor promises you. Zhou Fight said, "The inheritance of the will of Yellow River will be inherited by this emperor. Even if the other party is at the supreme will realm, they won't snatch the inheritance of the Yellow River's will from this emperor." Uncle Two's eyes lit up when he heard this, as if he had a new hope. "May your majesty return in triumph," he said seriously. Zhou Fight nodded, and he left with the 20 supreme gods. Uncle Two looked at Zhou Fight's departing figure and couldn't help but sigh. His majesty is so confident. He has never fought with the illusionist clan, but he is sure that he would win. I was wondering if I should warn his majesty to be careful of the enemy's strange methods, but let's forget it. His majesty should be invincible. He smiled and turned to leave. The duty of guarding the sword had already disappeared. It was time for Ilum to live the life he wanted. If one day the will of Yellow River could be revived, he would return here. At the same time, Zhou Fight flew towards the Yellow River slate at his fastest speed. He could sense the location of the Yellow River slate with the Yellow River Emperor's sword in his hand. Presumably the other party was the same. Will the other party come looking for me? This thought suddenly appeared in his mind. Ilay did not make any further guesses. He did some calculations in Ilay's mind and frowned slightly. Then he suddenly sneered. Swoosh! His figure and the 20 supreme gods behind him instantly disappeared into thin air. Wu Shang stood in front of the gate of the Yellow River quietly. Not far behind him were Tianyang Wuzhu, Prime Minister Wu, and the 20 supreme gods he had brought. However, Tianyang Wuzhu didn't seem to be in a good state. His face was pale, and the aura on his body was also very unstable. He seemed to have suffered serious injuries. Beside him, Prime Minister Wu looked anxious, but there was nothing he could do about Tianyang Wuzhu's injuries. He could only watch anxiously. At this moment, Zhou Fight led the 20 supreme gods and appeared above them before slowly flying down. He took a look at Wu Shang, whose gaze had turned cold. Then, he looked at Tianyang Wuzhu. Tianyang Wuzhu looked at Zhou Fight, who was unharmed, and immediately felt very embarrassed. He turned his head away and did not look into Zhou Fight's eyes. Zhou Fight did not mind. His gaze landed on Tianyang Wuzhu and the half of the Yellow River stone, slab on Wu Shang's body. He couldn't help but purse his lips. You're really something. A good Yellow River slate was broken into two by you. However, this emperor is very curious. This Yellow River slate should also be a will holy artifact, right? How did you guys break it? This thing was broken in the first place. It must have been made in the past. Tianyang Wuzhu turned around and looked at Zhou Fight. He said in a deep voice, "That's why we split it into two when we fought with this guy." Zhou Fight was enlightened. "I told you so. How could two supreme gods break a will holy artifact?" If that was the case, then he would turn around and run. This was because he couldn't damage the will holy artifact now. Hey, kid. At this moment, Wu Shang stared at Zhou Fight and the Yellow River Emperor sword on his back and asked, "Where's the demon fetus?" "You guess." Zhou Fight looked at him with a faint smile. "You killed him," Wu Shang said. "Means you are not foolish." Zhou Fight nodded. Wu Shang was silent for a while. He shook his head and sighed. As expected of the common people's regal, "None of you 4 Supreme Lord Reserve Army are simple." Zhou Fight gave a strange smile. It seemed that he still did not know that the demon fetus had completely perished and could no longer be reborn from the power of imagination. Otherwise, he would definitely not have such a reaction now. At this moment, Wu Shang's voice sounded again. "But it doesn't matter. The demon fetus is dead, but I can avenge him later. After the demon fetus is resurrected, I will personally tell him the news of your death, increasing his joy of being resurrected. You won't have that day." Zhou Fight shook his head. When Wu Shang heard this, he thought that the other party was saying that. He could deal with him today. He could not help but grin. It's good to be inexperienced. You're so brave when you talk and do things. Too bad. The three of us are now holding the Yellow River treasure. We can't fight directly under the rules of the Yellow River's will. Otherwise, we'll deal with you now, and we won't have to waste time with you here. Wu Shang smiled faintly. Zhou Fight smiled and did not say anything else. Wu Shang did not say anything. Let's see who gets the last laugh later. On the other side, Tianyang Wuzhu felt humiliated when he saw the two competitors ignoring him. However, he was also looking at Zhou Fight in shock at the same time. That demon fetus was actually killed by this guy. No matter how weak a guy who could be with Wu Shang was, he shouldn't be too weak, right? However, such an expert was actually eliminated by this common people's regal in such a short period of time. On the other hand, even though he had tried his best to snatch half of the Yellow River slate from the other party, he had also been severely injured by the other party. He did not have the slightest confidence in fighting for the inheritance of the Yellow River's will. Thinking of this, he could not help but fall silent. This common people's regal seemed to have exceeded his imagination. He thought for a moment and transmitted his voice to Zhou Fight. Wu Shang's conceptual divine ability is an ability to keep oneself unharmed. This ability is very difficult to deal with. No matter how much effort you use to severely injure or even close to death, the other party can recover in an instant and seem to be able to do so without any cost. If not for this guy's ridiculous conceptual god ability, how could I have been beaten up like this? Tianyang Wuzhu's angry voice sounded in Zhou Fight's mind. Zhou Fight was stunned when he heard this. Then he looked at Tianyang Wuzhuin. Wonder. This guy. He had thought that the other party was arrogant. However, from the looks of it, even though the other party was arrogant, he still had a plan. At the very least, he knew that he had to join forces with his own people, to deal with the powerful enemy in front of him. He did not want to hide it and watch his own people make a fool of themselves. Zhou Fight could not help but change his opinion of this guy. Besides, a conceptual god ability that allowed him to be unharmed and didn't require any price to be paid. It does sound tricky. Zhou Fight was deep in thought. However, there must be a solution. Conceptual gods were never an invincible, extraordinary tier system. If he was really invincible, then the entire myriad worlds would join the conceptual god cultivation system. The biggest disadvantage of an extraordinary tier system, like the conceptual god system, was that no matter how powerful a conceptual god cultivator's conceptual god ability was, it definitely had a fatal flaw. This fatal flaw could even turn the conceptual god's ability into nothingness, allowing the conceptual god to be killed by ordinary life forms, bar Chandid. He thought for a moment and stopped thinking about it. There wasn't much evidence, so no matter how much he thought about it, it was all in vain. Let's wait and see when we actually fight. Thinking of this, he came to the door of the Yellow River and took out the Yellow River Emperor sword on his back. The Yellow River Emperor sword seemed to have been summoned by something as soon as he took it out. It suddenly flew out of his hands and rushed straight for the door to the Yellow River. Finally, it stuck into a sword-shaped depression on the left side of the door to the Yellow River, perfectly overlapping with the sword-shaped depression. Seeing this, Wu Shang grinned and let go of the half of the Yellow River stone slab in his hand indifferently. He let the half of the Yellow River stone slab fly to a stone, slab-shaped depression on the right side of the door of the Yellow River and merge with the stone slab. Tianyang Wuzhu also let go of the other Yellow River stone slab in his hand and fused it with the other half of the stone slab. When the Yellow River Emperor sword and the Yellow River slate perfectly overlapped and caved in, the entire gate of the Yellow River shook. The entire Yellow River domain shook greatly. The trillions of souls were all shocked, not knowing what had happened. What a troubled world. Some of the souls sighed with emotion and panic. At the same time, the moment the door to the Yellow River opened, Zhou Fight, Wu Shang, and Tianyang Wuzhu immediately rushed in with their subordinates. When they rushed in, they saw a huge yellow arena and a huge phantom floating above it. Zhou Fight was very familiar with this phantom, This was because the clones of the main body had already seen the main body of this phantom several times in the time world. He was the Phantom of Yellow River's Will! Right at that moment, the Phantom of Yellow River's Will spoke. I am the Phantom of Yellow River's Will. Since you can see me, it means that I have already given up my position as the Lord of the Yellow River, or that I have already died. Never mind the past. Next, the three of you will fight for the position of Lord of the Yellow River. I will store all the treasures here and the supreme will realm inheritance I left here. When I was alive, I had already cultivated it to the high-level supreme will. Realmond was only a step away from the will realm. Unfortunately, I failed to advance in the end. All my cultivation experience was left here. I'm sure you'll be more interested in such a legacy. After saying that, both Wu Shang and Tianyang Wuzhu revealed shocked and ecstatic expressions. It was actually a high-level Supreme Will Realm inheritance. This was a top-rated Supreme Will Realm inheritance. Whoever could obtain it would be able to enjoy it for the rest of their lives. In the future, they would even be qualified to see the scenery at the peak. Zhou Fight was also pretty surprised. He did not expect Yellow River's will to hide it so deeply. A high-level Supreme Will Realm expert was a top expert. They were considered the top even among the many Supreme Will Realm experts under the Supreme Will. Yellow River was so low-key that it was simply ridiculous. Zhou Fight had a strange expression on his face. The Phantom of Yellow River's will did not notice the strange expression on Zhou Fight's face. He slowly said to Zhou Fight and the other two, "There's only one way to get my legacy and treasures. And that's winner takes all. The three of you are about to engage in an unlimited showdown. Whoever survives shall have what I have left." The Phantom of Yellow River's will said indifferently, "That's pretty rough. But I like it." Zhou Fight stroked his chin and thought. Hearing this, Wu Shang turned to look at Zhou Fight and Tianyang Ye. Wuzhu, a ferocious and murderous smile appeared on his face, only Tianyang Wuzhu and his subordinates' expressions darkened. This test method was the last thing they wanted to see, especially for the severely injured Tianyang Wuzhu. It was definitely bad news. Who asked his combat power to decrease at this moment? He couldn't defeat Wu Shang and the common people's regal at all, Lord Yellow River's will. Tianyang Wuzhu suddenly pointed at Wu Shang and said, "This guy is the enemy of the illusionist clan. Do you really want him to participate in your inheritance selection?" Zhou Fight looked at Tianyang Wuzhu, then at Wu Shang. Then he discovered that not only did Wu Shang not panic after hearing Tianyang Wuzhu's words, but he also revealed a calm smile. It was as if he was not afraid of the consequences of Tianyang Wuzhu's words. When Zhou Fight saw this, he had a bad feeling. Sure enough, the will of Yellow River glanced at Tianyang Wuzhu indifferently and said, "I have my own decision." Tianyang. Wuzhu's heart sank. He was so angry that he almost spewed out his anger. What was the will of Yellow River doing? Was he going to hand over eyeless inheritance to eyeless enemy? He originally thought that even if he might not be able to defeat these two guys, he should leave the inheritance to the common people's regal and not this Wu Shang from the illusionary race. But from the looks of it, he could not change the current situation. Zhou Fight fell into deep thought after hearing it. Could the will of the Yellow River really had some kind of concealment technique and was not afraid that the illusionist clan would obtain the inheritance and treasures left behind by him? He had some guesses, that was all he had to say. No matter how many thoughts Zhou Fight and Tianyang Wuzhu had, they could no longer stop Wu Shang from participating in this inheritance competition. A faint yellow light barrier suddenly appeared on the yellow arena below the Phantom of Yellow River's will, enveloping the entire arena. Then, Yellow River's will said, "This arena is the arena where you will fight next. You can bring your subordinates to participate in the battle, but the number of subordinates cannot exceed 20, and the highest strength of each subordinate cannot exceed the Grade 3 Supreme God Realm. This arena contains an unlimited amount of space enough for you to use your hands and feet to defeat your enemies. The one who survives to the end will be the new ruler of the Yellow River region. Go, after saying that. The Yellow Rivers will stopped talking. Ha 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 ha. I'll show you the combat ability of the king of Wushang. Wushang looked at Zhou. Fight and Tianyang Wuzhu in disdain, as if he was looking at the two defeated opponents. He laughed and flew into the arena with the 20 supreme gods of the illusionist clan. Then, he made a provocative gesture to Zhou Fight and Tianyang Wuzhu. When Zhou Fight saw this, he ignored this fellow's boring provocation and did not follow the flying arena. Instead, he looked at Tianyang Wuzhu and asked, "Are you going to the ring?" "None of your business," Tianyang Wuzhu said coldly. Then, he took out a medicinal pill that emitted a rich heaven and earth origin chi and swallowed it in one bite. 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pill. Zhou Fight raised his eyebrows. This medicinal pill was extraordinary. This was a pseudo-Supreme Will Realm medicinal pill that was said to be refined by only Supreme Will Realm experts. The life forms below the Supreme God level who took this pill would recover instantly, no matter how serious their injuries were. Moreover, in the next year, if they suffered fatal injuries, the remaining medicinal power of this 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pill would save them once and could save them 9 times in a row. After 9 times, the medicinal power of the 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pill would disappear, no longer having the life-saving effect from before. It could be said that a 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pill was almost equivalent to giving a life form below the Supreme God level 10 life-saving chances. This effect was even stronger than the 9-tailed fox's self-protection ability. Unfortunately, this 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pill only worked on life forms below the Supreme God level. However, the total value of the materials used to refine, it could be used to refine several types of Supreme Will Realm medicinal pills. In terms of cost-performance ratio alone, it was extremely low. However, if he encountered a Supreme Will Realm expert who wanted to give him some methods to protect his juniors, then this 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pill was the best choice. Generally speaking, only extremely wealthy Supreme Will Realm experts or even Supreme Will Realm factions would refine such pills for the juniors they valued. Thinking of this, Zhou Fight could not help but sigh in his heart. Tianyang Wuzhu was indeed the descendant of regal Great Solar. His foundation and methods were indeed not something ordinary supreme gods could compare to. Even with his current foundation, he would probably only be able to refine 189 Saint Heaven and Earth pills at most. However, he did not have a pill formula, nor did he have an alchemist at the Supreme Will Realm. Without these 2 prerequisites, it was impossible to just have a large number of raw materials. At this thought, Zhou Fight's heart skipped a beat. Perhaps he could work with Tianyang Wuzhu. He had a lot of Supreme God materials with him. It would be a waste to keep them in his hands. He might as well use them to exchange for benefits and let the Sun Divine Court refine 189 Saint Heaven and Earth pills for him and his subordinates. This way, wouldn't he and his subordinates have another way to survive? This way, he could deal with some special situations when he could not use the previous resurrection method. Tianyang Wuzhu naturally did not know what Zhou Fight was thinking. Seeing that he was staring at him with a baffling look in his eyes, he immediately said angrily, "What are you looking at?" "I can't help but admire His Highness Tianyang for being so handsome and unconcerned about trifles and daring to make sacrifices for great things." Zhou Fight's words were pleasant to hear. They would be working together in the future. He had to nurture his favorability in advance. The myriad worlds were not only about fighting and killing, but also about the ways of the world. Tianyang Wuzhu was stunned when he heard Zhou Fight's words. If Zhou Fight had said these words to him before killing the demon fetus, he would definitely feel that the other party was flattering him and wasting the 2 great titles of Common People's Regal and Supreme Lord Reserve Army. But now, the other party had the battle record of killing the demon fetus. This was something that even he might not be able to do. After being praised by such an expert, he actually felt a little smug. Even the cold gaze he used to look at Zhou fight had become less sharp. He said in a deep voice, "You and I face a great enemy together. We should work together. 1/9 Saint Heaven and Earth pill is nothing. As long as you can take down Wusheng, I'll give you one." Towards the end, he felt like he was gritting his teeth. All the injuries on his body were caused by the other party's punches and kicks. Every time he thought of it, he would always feel extremely humiliated. The key corners of Zhou Fight's mouth twitched. Who needed a 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pill? If he had hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, or even more. How long are you going to catch up? Get up here and let me beat you to death. On the other side, seeing that the two of them had been chatting for so long, Wushang said unhappily, "After." He finished speaking. He looked at the will phantom of Yellow River's will and realized that the will phantom of Yellow River's will was also in a state of narrowing its eyes. He was immediately even more unhappy. However, he could only endure it. "Shut up!" After Tianyang Wuzhu ate the 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pill, his confidence seemed to have recovered a lot. He immediately glared and scolded back. "Loser, Wu." Shang smiled sinisterly and said, "You're still not my match, even if you recover all your states now. Let me give you a word of advice. Just quit, so you don't have to die again." "You don't have a second pill, do you?" Tianyang Wuzhu did not speak. Indeed, he did not possess a second 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pill. He would really be unable to reverse the situation once he was beaten to death in the arena. But regal Great Solar's pride didn't allow him to retreat. He sneered and actually rushed into the arena with 20 supreme gods to fight Wu Shang. Zhou Fight clicked his tongue and flew into the arena with the 20 supreme gods. However, he didn't join in immediately. Instead, he led his subordinates to silently observe from the side. The conceptual god's ability was indeed very troublesome. He wouldn't join in for no reason and waste his efforts before investigating the root cause of the other party's immortality. At the same time, divine sun bathing the heavens, Tianyang Wuzhu roared and rushed into the sky, turning into a small sun and star that emitted endless light and heat. At the same time, endless meteor showers flew out from the sun that he had transformed into. Then they descended quickly like a rainstorm and attacked Wushang together. In the blink of an eye, Wushang was burned to a skeleton by countless meteor showers. His skeleton was abnormally strange. He didn't look like a human, but more like a pile of bones that had been temporarily piled up. However, such a pile of bones was now generating flesh and blood crazily. In less than a second, it returned to normal. Wushang did not care about his own pain or the endless meteor shower in the sky, as well as the light and heat. Under such an attack, he constantly regenerated his flesh and blood and was constantly on the verge of death. It was as if he didn't care about this with a crazy expression. He held the 2 bone sabers and charged at Tianyang Wuzhu. Zhou Fight frowned slightly. His perception was extremely strong. Therefore, at first glance, he could tell that Wushang did not consume any energy from the outside world, while his flesh and blood were constantly regenerating, and he was seriously injured. This is against the law of conservation of energy. God, spirits needed to consume external energy to complete the conversion of energy, and matter if they wanted to create something out of thin air, even with their cultivation system. And what was even more terrifying was, Zhou Fight could sense that the other party had not even officially activated his conceptual god power. He could complete such a ridiculous operation just by relying on some derivative and additional abilities of the conceptual god. Conceptual god system. This is unbelievable. Zhou Fight stroked his chin and thought. He even wanted to become a conceptual god now. The temptation of this unique, extraordinary tier civilization was something that every cultivator and even god spirit could not resist. No wonder so many god spirits wanted to go to the illusionary world. Other than wanting to advance to a higher level, he also wanted to see the scenery outside his cultivation civilization. At this moment, Tianyang Wuzhu also saw that the other party's injuries were constantly recovering. His expression darkened. but there was no surprise on his face. He had already experienced many of this fellow's methods. This is nothing. Heavenly Sun. Sacred Flame Strike. Tianyang Wuzhu waved his right hand, and the small sun behind him suddenly shrunk countless times, turning into a palm-sized fiery red bead that floated in his hand. The bead was clearly very small, yet it was emitting a frightening might, and the surrounding space was showing signs of cracking. Tianyang Wuzhu's scarlet hair danced wildly, and he had the temperament of a peerless supreme god. Zhou Fight was a little surprised. This was an arena space created by a Supreme Will Realm expert. The highest level could even accommodate Supreme Will Realm experts to fight. However, Tianyang Wuzhu could actually break the space here with his own methods. This Heavenly Sun Wushang was originally a quasi-Supreme Will Realm expert, coupled with his foundation and inheritance from the Sun Divine Court. He actually had a faint aura of a Supreme Will Realm expert. Wushang. Taste the power of my Heavenly Sun Sacred Flame. Tianyang Wuzhu roared. Then he saw the Heavenly Sun sacred bead in his hand suddenly release a scarlet fire pillar. The pillar of fire suddenly shot out and pounced at Wushang. Wushang's pupils constricted. He wanted to dodge, but he did. Not swoosh. Li was directly struck by the Heavenly Sun sacred flame. His entire body was buried in the dazzling flames of the Heavenly Sun sacred flame. Zhou Fight raised his eyebrows slightly. Wushang's aura disappeared? Is he dead? Is it that simple? Tianyang Wuzhu didn't look surprised at all. He stared at the spot where Wushang had been hit. After a while, a voice came from the fire. He. Interesting, but I'm unharmed. Ha 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 ha. A vigor appeared from the flames amidst his wild laughter. He slowly walked out. It was Wushang. At that moment, the last burns on his body had completely recovered. It looked as if he had not experienced the Heavenly Sun's sacred flame attack. Just now. That was an interesting move. Is there anything new? Wushang laughed brazenly. I'll satisfy you. Tianyang Wuzhu's eyes were cold as he released more than 10 attacks that were comparable to a trace of the Supreme Will Realm. However, even though these attacks could leave Wushang without a corpse, after a while, he revived in one piece. It wasn't a bad move either, but it was mediocre. I came back to life. Ha 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 ha, I've been resurrected unscathed. Is this all the fifth prince of the Sun Divine Court can do? You did everything you could, and I didn't suffer a single injury. It's a little boring. I'm fine. If you don't do something special, I'm going to make a move. At the same time, after each attack, the protagonist of Tianyang Wuzhu's eyes became filled with disbelief and finally despair. However, Zhou Fight seemed to have discovered something, and his eyes lit up. Tianyang Wuzhu looked at Wushang in a daze. Wushang was slowly walking towards him, his face bitter. It was the same again. He had clearly done his best, but the other party was able to face his attack unscathed, as if his attack was useless. It was not that he had never faced the Illusionist clan. He had been to the Twilight battlefield a long time ago and watched the battle between the Supreme Will and the Illusionist clan as the son of the regal Great Solar. He had personally experienced the Dusk battlefield for a period of time even after he became a supreme god. However, even though he had personally destroyed and seen many Illusionist clan members, those Illusionist clan members could not compare to the Illusionist clan in front of him. There was no solution. He still didn't know how to deal with the other party after 2 all-out battles. His eyes were filled with confusion. What should he do now? He could only turn to look at Zhou Fight, seeing that Wushang was getting closer. Have you seen enough? He said helplessly. He had long known that Zhou Fight had already entered and was watching the battle from the side, but he didn't say anything. Firstly, it was because he did not want anyone else to interfere in his battle with Wushang. He wanted to personally kill the other party to protect his honor. Secondly, it was because he knew that Zhou Fight did not know Wushang's background. Since he had decided to join forces with Zhou Fight, he wanted to let Zhou Fight watch the battle from the side for a while, and take the opportunity to understand this fellow's combat methods. Perhaps he could discover this fellow's weakness. It was absolutely impossible for him to defeat him now. It was time for this guy who had been watching the battle to come on stage. Enough, Zhou Fight said with a smile, then his expression turned serious. Leave the rest of the battle to me. Okay, be careful. Tianyang Wuzhu nodded and retreated. Trying to run? How could Wu Shang let Tianyang Wuzhu leave? This guy was the fifth direct descendant of regal Great Solar and had the potential to advance to the supreme will realm in the future. He might even be able to ascend to the supreme throne of regal Great Solar. For a fellow with such potential, he naturally couldn't let him leave. However, right at this moment, Zhou Fight appeared in front of Wu Shang as if he had teleported. He smiled. Next, your opponent is us. You? Wu Shang sneered and was about to rush over and kill Tianyang Wuzhu, who was in a bad state. Zhou Fight shook his head. You still don't have much of a reputation. You are still looking down on this emperor like this, even though this emperor has already killed a demon fetus. After saying that, he gently pushed out with his right hand. Quasi-Supreme Will Realm. Law skill, myriad methods, star palm, rumble. An incomparably huge golden palm suddenly appeared on the entire arena. This golden palm seemed to be created by the heavens. Its style was simple and mysterious. There were complicated and profound lore engravings on the surface and inside. A glance. It was as if the laws of the entire myriad worlds were contained in this palm. Wu Shang's expression changed. He actually felt an extremely terrifying threat from this golden palm. It was as if he would definitely be severely injured if he underestimated the might from this palm strike. He wanted to dodge without thinking. However, the locking ability, if the myriad method's star palm, was comparable to the locking ability of a supreme will realm expert with the enhancement of the endless laws. How could Wu Shang dodge it? Therefore, Wu Shang quickly realized with a dark expression that he could not dodge this palm at all. He took a deep breath. Not only did he not dodge, he even charged at the palm. He actually wanted to rely on his undying ability to break through Zhou Fight's attack head-on. Your attack can't hurt me, ha 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 ha. Wu Shang looked up at this guy and laughed. It's not over yet, Zhou Fight said calmly. Don't jump to conclusions. After saying that, he slapped out again. Wu Shang's divine body had yet to completely recover. He was powerless to dodge with this palm strike, and his divine body returned to its original state. He continued to reply. Zhou Fight continued to use the myriad methods. Star palm, Wu Shang would definitely be left without a corpse with every palm strike. However, Wu Shang would definitely recover quickly from nothing after every palm strike. Like a true immortal body in the legends, it's useless. Even though Wu Shang no longer had a body, his voice came from the void and laughed arrogantly. I'm the Undying King. No one can hurt me. Ha 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 ha. Zhou Fight's lips curled up. This further confirmed his guess. Right at that moment, Wu Shang suddenly mocked, Don't think you'll be fine just because you keep pulling away. I'll let you. See how you got the title of the King of Combat of Wu Shang. Wu Shang's figure suddenly disappeared as soon as he finished speaking. The next moment, he actually appeared out of thin air opposite Zhou Fight and punched the divine spark between Zhou Fight's eyebrows. Zhou Fight raised his eyebrows. He teleported and disappeared as he repelled the punch with the myriad method's star palm. However, something unexpected happened to him and the other god spirits watching the battle. Just after Zhou Fight teleported, Wu Shang also teleported to the opposite side of Zhou Fight. Wu Shang looked at Zhou Fight in front of him and smiled sinisterly. He said with full fighting spirit, You can't get away with this. Zhou Fight raised his eyebrows. This was the second conceptual god ability. This fellow was indeed the main force fighting for the inheritance of the Yellow River's will. He had many methods indeed. The illusionist clan, which had multiple conceptual god abilities, was rare even in the entire illusionist clan. He knew that it was useless, no matter how he retreated. The other party's second conceptual god ability was clearly that no matter how the enemy avoided him, he would follow closely behind. As for the drawbacks, Zhou Fight could not tell, yet. However, if this fellow felt that he was lacking in close combat, so he decided to attack him in close combat, he would have made the wrong choice. He grinned. He pointed a sword at the other party and said calmly, "Do you know that? This emperor has another title other than the common people's regal that few people know. You must die regardless of your title." Wu Shang said coldly, with a ferocious expression. He threw countless punches at Zhou Fight after saying that. Due to the speed of these fists, they turned into countless fist-shaped phantoms. Every punch shattered the surrounding space of the arena. It was no exaggeration to say that the punches turned into countless fist-shaped phantoms due to the speed of these fists. Every punch shattered the surrounding space of the arena. However, Zhou Fight was not afraid. He even took the initiative to meet the other party and counterattacked every punch that Wu Shang threw. Wu Shang quickly discovered in shock. Not only did his close combat martial arts ability, which he was proud of, not cause great damage to the other party when he got close, but his fist even started to hurt because of the other party's strong counterattack. What is this guy's divine body made of? Is it done by a will-holy artifact? Why is it so hard? Wu Shang was completely shocked. He had never seen such a powerful body among enemies of the same level. This is too ridiculous. Looking at Wu Shang's expression, Zhou Fight could guess what he was thinking. He chuckled calmly in his heart as he continuously defended and counterattacked. His supreme sacred body had already reached the Grade 3 Supreme God Realm. This sacred body cultivation method from the eternal immortal realm inheritance was enough to resist the full-strength attack of a low-level Supreme Will Realm expert, even if it was only at the Grade 3 Supreme God Realm now. If it could not even do this, how could it be considered a cultivation technique inherited by the eternal immortal realm? Previously, Zhou Fight was not too sure about his true combat strength. There were very few enemies that could make him go all out after all. However, he could probably figure out his current strength through the Wu Shang in front of him now. With the invincible supreme sacred body, the invincible offensive myriad methods, star palm, and the all the land. In the world belongs to the king that could suppress strength. His defense, offensive, and domain abilities had already reached the low-level Supreme Will realm. Coupled with trump cards like the Formless Book and the innate Sacred Heart, even if he faced an upper-level Supreme Will realm expert, he would have a way to escape and save his life. In other words, he could already officially be considered a low-level Supreme Will realm combat power, and his true realm was only at the Grade 3 Supreme God realm. It was ridiculous to think about it for the other people. However, Zhou Fight felt that it was normal. That was because this was how his main body had risen through the ranks. Of course, he was still very happy. After confirming that he now had the combat strength of the Supreme Will realm, in other words, as long as he did not encounter the Supreme Will, Crimson Overlord, and the other willpower experts in this world, he would basically have no problem protecting himself. This sense of security was really maxed out. Speaking of which, Zhou Fight and Wu Shang had been fighting fiercely. If Zhou Fight was calm and relaxed, the more Wu Shang fought, the more shocked he became. The more he fought, the less confident he became. Why is this common people's regal so good at close combat? Wu Shang basically had no opponents who could defeat him in close combat in the Illusionist clan. Among the powerhouses below the Supreme God level, there were only 2 or 3 opponents who were stronger than him. And even if there were 2 or 3, the difference in strength between them and him was not very big. He might be able to win 2 to 3 rounds while the other party would win 7 to 8 rounds if he fought 10 rounds. High melee combat skills and the conceptual godly ability of close combat. This was also why he called himself the King of Combat. However, even such a proud he could sense a huge difference from Zhou Fight in the short period of time he had fought him. He felt that he would be the winner of all 10 rounds if he fought against the common people's regal for 10 rounds. It was impossible even for them to tie. The difference in close combat strength was too great. It was so big that he did not even have the slightest confidence of winning. Bang! Zhou Fight first cut off Wu Shang's arm with a sword, then kicked him more than 10 light years away. Then, he gently stroked the divine sword in his hand and said calmly, "This emperor's other title is Heavenly Martial God. Your so-called combat martial arts are useless in this emperor's eyes. You'd better honestly develop your conceptual god cultivation system in the future. A normal cultivation system like martial arts can't be integrated into your main body's conceptual divine. Extraordinary tears system. Studying this is just a waste of time." "Who said that I need you to teach me?" Wu Shang was furious and attacked even more fiercely. However, there was a huge difference in skill and strength. He was still no match for Zhou Fight no matter how much strength he erupted with. Often, he would have already died 7 to 8 times before he could cause any harm to Zhou Fight. He would have long died at Zhou Fight's hands if he didn't have infinite rebirth. Wu Shang also realized that if this continued, even if he had an indestructible body, it was impossible for him to defeat Zhou Fight and obtain the inheritance of the Yellow River's will. Therefore, he directly retreated and stared at Zhou Fight from afar after he fought Zhou Zhan a few more times. Supreme Will Realm, a mere grade 3. Supreme God Realm like you actually has the combat strength of the Supreme Will Realm. Even the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord and God King. Heaven Punishment only have Supreme Will Realm combat strength when they are at the Quasi-Supreme Will Realm and Grade 4 Supreme God Realm. You actually have the combat strength of the Supreme Will Realm so early. No wonder you can obtain the last spot for the Yellow River's will inheritance. At this point, he suddenly laughed in a low voice. Hey, 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 hey. I can't take this. Lying down. I wasn't going to use this trick. You forced my hand. Boom, 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 boom. 100 myriad methods. Star palms suddenly erupted and hit Wu Shang in the blink of an eye. You want to stop me from using my trump card? No way. I can live forever. You can't kill me. Wu Shang laughed arrogantly. He looked at Zhou Fight, wanting to see even a trace of panic and worry on his face. However, his hopes were dashed. Zhou Fight looked calm, as if he did not care about Wu Shang's methods at all. The next second, just as Wu Shang was about to revive under the attack of the Myriad Method Star Palm, Zhou Fight suddenly activated the All the Land in the World belongs to the King domain, and included Wu Shang in it. Then, he casually set a rule in the domain that the enemy could not speak. Wu Shang realized that he could not speak and immediately panicked very visibly. At the same time, his flesh and blood stopped regenerating. It was as if his undying ability had failed. Tianyang Wuzhu and his subordinates widened their eyes when they saw this scene. The conceptual god power of his is no longer effective? Prime Minister Wu said in shock. What a fatal weakness. Zhou Fight slowly walked in front of him and looked at him with a faint smile. Your first conceptual god ability will lose its effect as long as you can't say things like rebirth, resurrection, or injury. This emperor is right? Wu Shang's divine body stiffened. Seeing this, Zhou Fight shook his head and said something that broke Wu Shang's defense the most. You're even simpler than that demon fetus after knowing the weakness of your conceptual god power. After saying that, he slapped Wu Shang as he secretly activated the power of the illusionary legendary tier sage seal to augment his palm. Wu Shang died on the spot, and he did not revive again. The common people's regal's victory. Outside the arena, the phantom of Yellow River's will smiled faintly and looked at Zhou Fight with deep admiration. Rumble. The faint yellow light barrier that enveloped the entire arena dissipated, leaving only Zhou Fight, Tianyang Wuzhu, and the 20 Supreme Gods under them. As for the 20 Scarlet Supreme Gods under Wu Shang, they had long been killed by Zhou Fight and the Supreme Gods under Tianyang Wuzhu before the battle ended. They saw the other Supreme Gods of the Illusionist clan under Wu Shang running outside as soon as they emerged. Obviously, they saw their master's death and knew that they would never be able to escape if they did not run now. However, Zhou Fight and Tianyang Wuzhu naturally could not let these remnants of the illusionist clan escape. Zhou Fight personally took action, a palm strike. The myriad methods. Star Palm flew out with an earth-shattering aura and attacked the remaining supreme gods of the illusionist clan. This myriad method star palm transformed into hundreds of smaller myriad method star palms that went straight for every supreme god of the illusionist clan while flying. In the blink of an eye, the remaining supreme gods of the illusionist clan were all killed by Zhou Fight's palm. When Tianyang Wuzhu saw this scene, he understood the power of Zhou Fight's almost casual palm strike. He couldn't help but take a deep breath as a thought naturally appeared in his mind. Supreme Will Realm. This was the Supreme Lord's Fourth Reserve Army that he had looked down on at the beginning, but his impression of him had changed. He actually had true Supreme Will Realm combat strength now. Even if it was only low-level Supreme Will Realm combat strength, it was extremely terrifying. In the entire Supreme Great Cosmos, there were only more than 50 Supreme Will Realm experts, on the surface and in secret. There were only more than 200 people who were not at the Supreme Will Realm, but had the strength of the Supreme Will Realm, for various reasons. In other words, the common people's regal in front of him, the Supreme Lord's Fourth Reserve Army, could already be ranked in the top 300 in the entire Supreme Great Cosmos in terms of combat strength. This had already officially advanced to the level of a top expert of the Supreme Great Cosmos. The most terrifying thing was, this common people's regal was only a Grade 3 Supreme God Realm. A Grade 3 Supreme God Realm actually had the strength of a low-level Supreme Will Realm. This is too ridiculous. Even the top geniuses of the Supreme Great Cosmos, God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord. These two divine heroes were not as terrifying as this common people's regal at the same level. Could it be that the Supreme Great Cosmos had welcomed a genius expert who was even more terrifying than God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord? A thought that even he did not dare to believe appeared in Tianyang Wuzhu's mind. Those were the God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord. In front of these two, not to mention him, even the older father, Regal Great Solar and Regal Great Lunar, who were of the same level as him, had to treat him with respect. In front of those two, he was simply a little Karami. However, now that he saw the power of the common people's regal, he felt that this common people's regal's potential was even higher than those two. This thought shocked himself. He didn't dare to think too much. At this moment, the voice of Yellow, River's will, finally sounded. Common people's regal. His voice was dignified and distant, but it carried a faint gentleness and gratification. I'm here, Zhou Fight said respectfully. You have defeated Wu Shang and are qualified to accept my inheritance. Are you ready? Zhou Fight nodded and said, I'm ready. The Yellow River's will nodded and looked at the still stunned Tianyang Wuzhu. Your Majesty, Tianyang Wuzhu. Your performance in the battle with Wu Shang was not bad either. Among the many descendants of Regal, Great Solar, be it combat strength or potential, you can be ranked above average. These three treasures, Blue Yang Jade, Mystic Origin Pill, and Myriad Light Dao Protector Flower, are your rewards. After saying that, 3 treasures flew out from the glabella of the Yellow River's will and flew in front of Tianyang Wuzhu. Junior, thanks, Lord Yellow River's will, Tianyang Wuzhu roared. He originally thought that this training would be fruitless. In fact, he felt that he might lose his life on this trip after seeing Wu Shang's strength. He did not expect that he would be able to obtain a few treasures. As for the powerful Wu Shang, he did not obtain anything and even died here. Then he looked up and received the 3 treasures. The smile on his face increased when his willpower came into contact with the 3 treasures. This was because he suddenly discovered that these 3 treasures were all low-level Supreme Will Realm treasures. Even though they were only materials and not Will Holy artifacts, they were still very precious. He did not have many treasures of this level after advancing to the Supreme Will Realm, even if he was a direct descendant of regal Great Solar. You're dismissed now that you've received your reward, the Will of Yellow River said. Yes. Tianyang Wuzhu also knew that it was not convenient for him to be at the scene at this time, so he hurriedly said respectfully, I'll take my leave now. After saying that, he suddenly sent a voice transmission to Zhou Fight. Your Excellency, common people's regal. Will Your Excellency have time to talk to me after Your Excellency receives the inheritance and legacy of the Will of Yellow River? I. Tianyang Wuzhu, admire Your Excellency, common people's regal, for killing the powerhouses of the illusionist clan. I also want to give you some gifts. Zhou Fight was speechless. Wasn't this prince still arrogant before the competition for the inheritance? His transition was unexpectedly smooth. He had a bright future. Zhou Fight praised in his heart and agreed to the other party's request. It would be a waste not to. Accept a gift that came knocking on your door. Besides, he had business to discuss with the other party, so he could talk about it together. When Tianyang Wuzhu heard that Zhou Fight had agreed to his request, his face immediately lit up. At this point, he did not waste any more time and immediately left the land of inheritance of the Yellow River's will. At this point, only the will phantoms of Zhou Fight and Yellow River's will were left in this land of inheritance. Common people's regal. The will phantom of Yellow River's will smiled and said, You can also say that it's the third reserve army of the Supreme. Lord, you and I are old acquaintances. Zhou Fight could not help but raise his eyebrows. He probed, Why do you say that, Your Excellency? This should be the first time I've met Your Excellency, right? Oh? Is this the first time we've met? The Yellow River's will chuckled. You've seen me more than once in the Time Ruins, right? Your Excellency actually knows about the Time Ruins? Zhou Fight said in shock. He really did not expect that the will of Yellow River would even know about the Time Ruins. Yellow River's will nodded and said, You're not at the Supreme Will Realm, so you don't know the profundity of this realm. An existence at this realm has completely broken away from the upper limit of the God Spirit and reached an unbelievable realm. Existences at the Supreme Will Realm like us can already rely on our wills to interfere with the other timelines, and even absorb them from the other timelines to restrain them to increase their strength realm. It's also because of this ability that Supreme Will Realm existences basically have the ability to deduce and divine. I once sensed the will of the Yellow River in the ruins of time you're managing. It's just that this main body is too far away, and it's not very useful for me to absorb it, so after I roughly knew some information, I stopped caring. I didn't expect it to be mentioned again. The Yellow River's will sighed. Zhou Fight clicked, his tongue in wonder. Even though he now had a few Supreme Will Realm inheritances, the Willpower inheritance even had an incomplete Eternal Immortal Realm inheritance like the Supreme Sacred Body. However, he knew the principle that going overboard was as bad as falling short. Therefore, up until now, there were not many realm secrets about the Supreme Will Realm and the Will Realm. He only understood the cultivation content of the Supreme God Realm and the related breakthrough content of how to break through to the Supreme Will Realm. He knew a little about other things, but not much. Therefore, Zhou Fight found what the Will Phantom of Yellow River said very novel. At the same time, he was greatly shocked. It turned out that the Supreme Will Realm could already interfere with the timeline. They could even absorb themselves in other timelines and restrain them to increase their strength realm. This was unbelievable. The other timelines should be similar to a parallel universe, right? To be able to achieve such an ability was really unbelievable. However, they could do similar things when one cultivated the space-time laws to an extremely high level. However, they could at most summon their projections in other timelines to come to their timelines to fight for them, or predict and understand some relevant information about the future in advance, but most of them were not very accurate. There was a possibility that something could happen in one timeline in the future after all. It was very likely that it had never happened in another timeline. There was not even a sign of it happening. That's why the predictions are off. Other than that, The god spirits of law of space-time could not do anything else. It was impossible to compare to a Supreme Will Realm expert forcefully interfering with the other timelines and even absorbing himself from the other timelines to increase his strength. At this thought, Zhou Fight asked curiously, "Forgive me for my offense, but since Your Excellency can interfere with the timeline, can't you resolve your crisis in advance and let Your Excellency live? Brother Soul Heaven has always missed you, and when I came, I met Uncle too. He also misses Lord Yellow River's will very much." The will of Yellow River shook its head when it heard this. "It's precisely because we saw countless timelines about ourselves that we saw countless possibilities. This might be the future I'm waiting for. What choice do you think I should make? Like the fall of my timeline, I saw no less than hundreds of millions of possibilities in other timelines. I also saw more timelines. I've been safe and sound until now. Tell me, which one should I believe?" Yet Zhou Fight fell silent. So that was how it was, in that case, even if a Supreme Will Realm expert could see the endless timeline that belonged to them, because there were too many choices, there might be too many. In this situation, they were no different from mortals. It was not much different from not seeing them. "Trust yourself," Zhou Fight asked. A smile appeared on the face of the Yellow River's will when it heard this. Then it sighed and said, "Yes, you can only believe in yourself." Then this person and the Supreme Will Realm stopped talking. This was because the will of Yellow River in front of him had already killed him because it believed in him. Regarding this, Zhou Fight could only comment that this Yellow River's will was really unlucky. In order to change the topic, Zhou Fight asked, "If the Supreme Will Realm can interfere with the timeline and absorb the self in the other timelines, what about the will? It's hard to say whether it's difficult or not. As long as the Supreme Will Realm absorbs all myself in the timeline and transforms myself into one, I can advance to the Supreme Will Realm. However, this step seems simple, but it's actually filled with danger." Yellow River's will did not seem to be in a hurry to hand over the inheritance to Zhou Fight, so he simply told him everything he knew about realms. There is no need to mention the threat of external enemies, but the real threat comes from itself. To be precise, it's my own self from another timeline. My other self in the timeline? Zhou Zhou was shocked. That's right. The will of Yellow River nodded slightly. When you just enter the Supreme Will Realm and begin to absorb your other self in the other timelines to increase your strength, your other self in the other timelines will come to this time to deal with you under the coercion of fate. It's fine when it's median and below. Most of these otherworldly bodies who came to deal with you are relatively weak. You can easily deal with them. However, when you advance to the upper-level Supreme Will Realm, or absorb more than half of your timeline, the remaining you in the timeline will be bestowed with powerful power by fate. Under the enhancement of these powers, these otherworldly bodies are already comparable to or even surpassing you. At that time, once the two sides collide, whether you win or lose, life or death, it's uncertain. When the Yellow River's will said this, its expression was very solemn. Zhou Fight frowned when he heard that. The cultivation of the Supreme Will Realm was actually so different, killing him to complete the advancement of his strength? Then, Your Excellency, who were you when you were alive? Zhou Fight stopped thinking and asked, "In the cultivation of the Supreme Will Realm, it's easier for the low-level and middle-level. Therefore, I spent hundreds of thousands of years to break through and advance to the upper-level Supreme Will Realm." The Yellow River's will said, "Hundreds of thousands of years." The corners of Zhou Fight's mouth twitched. He had been cultivating for less than a year. The will of Yellow River told Zhou Fight more, seeing that he was interested in general cultivation, knowledge in this aspect. He could tell that Zhou Fight had cultivated for a short period of time and was already a Grade 3 Supreme God Realm expert. He could also unleash the combat strength of a Supreme Will Realm expert in advance. Coupled with the help of the Supreme Will Realm, he felt that he was almost certain to advance to the Supreme Will Realm in the future. Therefore, he was not afraid that saying this would affect his future advancement. Zhou Fight listened, happily. The will of Yellow River only stopped talking after a long while. That's all for now. If you have any questions in the future, you can directly understand them from the inheritance I gave you, or you can directly go to the ruins of time and ask the former me. He probably won't reject you. I'll be the one to give you my heritage and inheritance, the Yellow River's will said. Okay, Zhou Fight nodded. He had been waiting for this moment. Yellow River's will did not say much. He saw two items appear in front of him, with a thought. They were the Yellow River Emperor sword and the Yellow River stone slab that had opened. The door previously. You should already know the effect of the Yellow River Emperor sword. As for the effect of the Yellow River slab, it's mainly about being the carrier of my legacy. In the future, you will be the ruler of the Yellow River region. I'll leave these two will-holy artifacts to you. After the will of Yellow River finished speaking, the two will-holy artifacts flew towards Zhou Fight and quickly arrived in front of him. Zhou Fight had already seen the attributes of the Yellow River Emperor sword, so his gaze landed on the Yellow River stone slab. It turned out that this Yellow River slate was mainly the inheritance vessel of the Yellow River's will. No wonder. He had never heard of the effects of the Yellow River slate. Zhou Fight thought and looked over. Information about the holy artifact appeared. Holy artifact, name, Yellow River stone slab. Holy artifact grade, high-level will, holy artifact. Holy artifact will 1, power of the Yellow River, a portion of Ai. The power of the Yellow River will is stored in the Yellow River stone slab. It can be used to deal with most experts below the Supreme Will realm. However, this power will decrease as the number of times it is used, and it will finally be completely exhausted. Holy Artifact Will 2, Yellow River Will Inheritance. The Yellow River slab contains the inheritance of the will of the Yellow River. The successor recognized by the will of the Yellow River will obtain this inheritance and walk the path of the Supreme Will realm. Living beings who have not been recognized by the will of the Yellow River will not be able to see the information of this will skill. Holy Artifact Will 3, Heart of the Yellow River. The Yellow River slab is the origin treasure of the Yellow River realm. Living beings with the Yellow River slab can greatly increase their relevant comprehension when cultivating the related nomological path and will path of the Yellow River. When they encounter a bottleneck, it's easier for them to develop cultivation inspiration and break through the bottleneck to advance to a higher level. Holy Artifact Will 4, Yellow River Water Refinement. The Yellow River slate is soaked in the water of the Yellow River and possesses the power of the water of the Yellow River. The owner can use this power to sharpen their will and greatly increase the efficiency of their willpower. The highest level of willpower can be raised to the upper Supreme Will realm. Holy Artifact Will 5, Key to the Yellow River, Part E, 2. The Yellow River Emperor Sword and the Yellow River Slab are the two keys to opening the inheritance of the Yellow River Will. With them, you will have a chance to open the inheritance of the Yellow River Will in the future and obtain all the inheritance of the Yellow River Will. Prompt: requires willpower to recognize a master. Zhou Fight's eyes lit up. The greatest use of this Yellow River slate was naturally the inheritance of the Yellow River's will inside it. However, he did not expect that this will holy artifact was actually the same as the holy scripture of the heart. It was a supplementary cultivation type holy artifact of the will holy artifact level. Furthermore, the holy scripture of the heart was only a low-level will holy artifact. This Yellow River stone slab was a true upper-level will holy artifact. The difference between the two was huge. One Yellow River slate was equivalent to 10 holy scripture of the hearts. This was the huge difference between a low level and a high level. It was just like the huge difference in strength between a low-level Supreme Will Realm expert and an upper Supreme Will Realm expert. In addition, the effect of the heart of Yellow River on this Yellow River slate was also very useful. Even though he had already confirmed his path and would not take the path of the Yellow River's will. But using the effect of the heart of Yellow River to assist him in comprehending the inheritance of the Yellow River's will to provide a reference for his future path was indeed a very good method. With the effect of this heart of Yellow River, he would be able to advance to the Supreme Will realm faster in the future when he comprehended the inheritance of the Yellow River's will. Even at the Supreme Will realm, he would be able to greatly increase his cultivation speed. Only when he advanced to the upper Supreme Will realm would the effect of the heart of Yellow River be useless to him. However, when the time came, he could completely pass it on to his subordinates, and it could still be of great use. Finally, it was also something that Zhou Fight valued. Furthermore, it was second only to the effect of inheriting the legacy, the power of the Yellow River. With the power of the Yellow River, he had another Supreme Will Realm technique. In the future, even if he faced an upper-level Supreme Will Realm expert, he would not have to be too afraid. It is still okay as long as it worked, even though there were limitations to the number of times it could be used. If it's gone, it means it's useful to me. Zhou Fight might feel a little regretful that he had not used it. Thank you, Lord Yellow River, for bestowing me with the inheritance. Zhou Fight first said this respectfully to the Will Phantom of Yellow River's will, before putting away the two Will Holy artifacts with respect. He felt a little emotional. In the past, with the 100% drop rate, King of Loots, Heavenly Fate, Di Huang, and other income-type Lord Talents, he had never lacked weapons and equipment. He had always been used to being self-sufficient. However, at this level, the products of the Lord Talent could no longer keep up with his development. He had to find treasures to strengthen himself. For example, the Yellow River Emperor Sword and the Yellow River Stone Slab. However, Zhou Fight did not feel that it was a pity. Firstly, he already had the subsequent inheritance of the Supreme Sacred Body. As long as he cultivated the Supreme Sacred Body to the Supreme Will Realm, he could continuously produce Will Holy artifacts wholesale. There would be no shortage at all. At that time, it would not be a problem to give every Supreme Will Realm, expert in the Supreme Great Cosmos, a set of Will Holy artifacts. Thirdly, he couldn't delay his growth just to equip himself with weapons. Wouldn't that be neglecting the essentials? Even though the current situation was a little regretful, it was actually the outcome he wanted. However, he didn't think too much about it. That was because at this moment, the will of Yellow River spoke again. Actually, you should lead your subordinates to completely expel the Illusionist clan from the Yellow River region before I hand over my inheritance to you under normal circumstances. However, since you're the successor of the Supreme Will, then forget it. The will of Yellow River smiled faintly. This rule was set when he had just died. At that time, he was filled with hatred for the Illusionist clan and guilt for letting down the expectations of the Supreme Will. Therefore, it was stipulated that if they wanted to obtain his inheritance, they had to chase the Illusionist clan out of the Yellow River to obtain his inheritance. However, now that things had come to this, he had seen through a lot and let go of a lot. In addition, Zhou Fight was the inheritor of the Supreme Will and had infinite potential. So he decided not to make these restrictions. It could also be considered to make up for the guilt he felt towards the Supreme Will. I see, Zhou Fight thought to himself. No wonder the will of the Yellow River handed this inheritance to him before he could chase the enemies of the Illusionist clan out. He was overjoyed. It was naturally a good thing to be able to obtain the inheritance of a top Supreme Will Realm expert without paying much. It would be a little difficult for him to chase the Illusionist clan out of the Yellow River realm. Now, there was more than one Supreme Will Realm expert in the Illusionist clan in the Yellow River realm, after all. Even though he now had some Supreme Will Realm methods, it was not to the extent of being able to crush them. When he reached the quasi-Supreme Will Realm, perhaps he could lead his subordinates to completely chase them away and return the Yellow River to a pure land. It was still a long way off. In addition to my inheritance and holy artifacts, there are also some of my inheritances. You'll be the Lord of the Yellow River realm in the future. Even though this title doesn't live up to its name, you should take these things. I hope you can break through early in the future and reach the Supreme Will Realm. Expel these enemies from the other world as soon as possible, and become the true ruler of the Yellow River realm. The will of Yellow River said, "Yes, Your Excellency, I will definitely destroy the illusionist clan in this Yellow River region," Zhou Fight said respectfully. The will of Yellow River could not help but be speechless. He just wanted this successor of the Supreme Will to be expelled from the illusionist clan one day. And he actually wanted to completely destroy the illusionist clan in the realm under his feet. The Yellow River's will could not help but sigh, as expected of the successor personally chosen by the Supreme Will. He had potential, strength, courage, and ambition. How could such a successor not satisfy the Supreme Will? Even the will of Yellow River was a little envious. Why didn't he have such a successor when he was alive? If he had such a successor, perhaps he would not have died in the ambush of the illusionary race in such a hurry back then. Or even if he died, the Yellow River region would have a successor to maintain the overall situation and would not have ended up like this. The more he thought about it, the more he sighed in his heart. Then he quickly threw away these useless emotions and sighs and continued, "These are my inheritance. There are also some treasures inside that are more useful to you. I hope I can help you in the future." After saying that, a faint yellow treasure vault appeared out of thin air. This treasure vault was extremely huge. It was not an exaggeration to describe it as indomitable. In front of it was a majestic yellow door with 4 ancient words written on it. The Yellow River Treasure Vault. Zhou Fight flew over curiously and reached out to touch the door of the treasure vault. The next moment, his will was sucked in, inside the Yellow River Treasure Vault. Zhou Fight looked at the scene in front of him in a daze. The scene in front of him was a vast starry sky. In this starry sky there were countless planets, and every planet was filled with treasures, from legendary tier treasures to Supreme Will realm treasures. Defense, attack, healing, dispelling curses, medicine, building materials, blueprints, puppets, spaceships, talismans, legacies, divine artifacts, holy artifacts. There were all kinds of treasures and even supreme treasures. How powerful was Zhou Fight's perception? However, he couldn't determine how many treasures there were in a short period of time, even with his perception. He only knew that the number 1 treasure vault, that he was so proud of, had to admit defeat in front of this treasury. Even though there were not as many divine artifacts as in his number 1 treasure vault, they had 10 times or more treasures than him other than divine artifacts. Ridiculous. It is too ridiculous. Zhou Fight was shocked. This was the first time he had come into contact with the foundation of a Supreme Will realm existence. He realized that he had underestimated the ability of a Supreme Will realm expert to amass wealth with this contact. Especially the wealth accumulation ability of a high-level Supreme Will realm expert, like the Yellow River's will. It was no exaggeration to say that these treasures could establish at least 100 blazing sun divine kingdoms, not including divine artifacts, excluding the divine artifacts he had. Shocking. The will of Yellow River chuckled and said, "These are considered quite little. Unfortunately, I didn't want to go out and plunder other alternate universes anymore for various reasons. From then on, my wealth only dwindled. My wealth kept decreasing, and in the end, this is all that is left. What you see is actually less than 1% of what I had at the height of my wealth. I don't like going out. In my life, I've only gone out twice and plundered 2 alternate universes without the protection of willpower experts. At that time, it was the peak of my accumulated wealth. Unfortunately, I didn't want to go out and plunder other alternate universes anymore for various reasons. From then on, my wealth only dwindled. My wealth kept decreasing, and in the end, this is all that is left. What you see is actually less than 1% of what I had at the height of my wealth." The will of Yellow River smiled faintly. Like those supreme willpower experts who often go out to the ultimate void great cosmos and plunder those otherworldly great cosmoses without the protection of willpower. Their wealth far exceeds mine by 10 times or even more. The ultimate void, great cosmos, is simply like a treasure vault for men of strong will. Other than eternal immortal realm treasures, they can have anything they want. In Zhou Zhou's eyes lit up. It turned out that a Supreme Will Realm expert would actually go to the ultimate void great cosmos to plunder other alternate universes without the protection of willpower experts. No wonder the wealth of the Yellow Rivers in Will was so shocking. If he relied on plundering the wealth in the Supreme Great Cosmos, he would probably have to cause a commotion in the myriad worlds to accumulate it. However, it was different in the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos. The Ultimate Void Great Cosmos was truly boundless and contained endless wealth. It's a piece of cake to get this kind of wealth. The Will of Yellow River also noticed the interested expression on Zhou Fight's face. He smiled and said, "If you're interested, you can also plunder or even directly occupy them after you advance to the Supreme Will Realm. You walk the path of a lord. You'll have to take this step sooner or later. Don't feel burdened. The Ultimate Void, Great Cosmos, is like this. If you don't plunder them and occupy their universe when they grows up, they will turn around and attack you for no reason. In a place like the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos, only experts who suppressed everything could survive. Even in our Supreme Great Cosmos and the Crimson Great Cosmos, with the protection of the Supreme Will and the Crimson Overlord, we have been invaded more than 31 times in the history of our Great Cosmos. If not for the Supreme Will and the Crimson Overlord gradually making a name for themselves, and making the other great cosmoses not dare to do it again, our great cosmos might have already become a colonial universe of the other great cosmoses. How would you have the chance to rise? The Will of Yellow River instructed. The common people's regal would be the successor of the Supreme Will in the future. He felt that it was necessary for him to tell him the truth about the ultimate. Void Great Cosmos in advance, lest he had some naive thoughts about the ultimate Void Great Cosmos. I understand. Thank you for your guidance, Your Excellency, the Will of Yellow River. Zhou Fight nodded seriously. In fact, he had long been mentally prepared for this. Otherwise, he would not have sent his clone to another Lord's Great Cosmos in advance to prepare to plunder the Lord's resources of them. However, the Yellow River's will was also kindly reminding him, so he naturally would not say anything unnecessary. The Will of Yellow River nodded slightly. He could tell that Zhou Fight was listening, right at that moment. He saw some hesitation on Zhou Fight's face. The Yellow River's will smiled and asked, "Common people's regal, if you have anything to say, just ask. You and I can be considered master and disciple. There's no need to be so formal."